What's up, folks? This is Justin from Books, Bricks, and Boards. On this channel, I talk a lot about OSR games. But if you're new to the hobby, or if you've been a lapsed gamer for several years, you may not really even know what the OSR is. So today, I'm going to go into a little bit of detail on what the OSR is and what some of the features of different OSR games are that I like and how you can implement them at your table. So the OSR, or Old School Renaissance, also Old School Revival, is a movement within the hobby to utilize older rule sets to create new game systems. Some of these game systems are incredibly faithful to the originals, so much so that if you were to sit down at a table and play by these rules with a group of players using the actual older books, they would not know the difference. However, many of them have created great innovations. They've changed the way some of the clunkier aspects work. They've added classes, races, and monsters to the mix. Some of them tackle other genres, and many of them do a much better job of organizing all of the material. Some of those earlier books were a bit of a mess, if we're going to be honest. But without further ado, I'm going to talk to you about 10 of my favorite OSR products and the parts of them that I think you could implement into your game, whether you're going to play them or not. That's one of the other great things about these OSR games, because they are all based on a very closely related set of rules. You can easily mix and match pieces and parts from one to the other, taking a class from here or a rule from here and combining them into your game. So even if you don't want to play any of these, there's a good chance you might want to pick up some of them just so you can rob some of the material for your game. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, I'm going to start off by letting you know that while all of these books are amongst my favorite of the OSR, I don't have a specific top 10 list because I couldn't choose one of these over another. It's like choosing your favorite child. That's just not something that we do here. But what I can do is I can tell you which parts of these systems particularly stand out from the rest of the group and allow you to use that to decide whether that is an important aspect of the rule set for you and your table, and see if it is worthwhile for you to explore further picking these up. Now, what I have in front of me here is the Old School Essentials Rules Tome. This is a combination of the Basic Expert set, the original before the Beckme sets, compiled in a way that is much, much more organized and clear. Gavin Norman and the folks at Necrotic Gnome are probably the best in the business about layout and about getting the rules the most accurate to the original system, while also improving clarity from that clunkier original system. Some of the things that I really like about these Old School Essentials books are the two-page layouts, whereby whatever you're looking for is going to be all within eyeshot with one open two-page spread. For example, the entire cleric class right here in a two-page spread. Another thing that the folks at Old School Essentials really do well is they hire folks that have an evocative art style that is reminiscent of the older games, which we really enjoy. Now, the best part about the Old School Essentials set to me is, as I said at the beginning of the video, these OSR games are all very highly interchangeable and relatable. This is the best laid out reference book for any OSR game. So if I was going to run any OSR game, I'd want to have this in my backpack just so that I could easily look up anything that I need at the table. And I know it's going to be clear, I know it's going to be concise, and I know it's going to be accurate. And that is why Old School Essentials should be on your shelf. And here I have Worlds Without Number by Kevin Crawford and Sine Nomine Publishing. Worlds Without Number is a little less true to the original rule set in that it adds an excellent skill system that is reminiscent of the Traveler RPG. It also adds edges and foci to help round out characters and make them a little bit more individualized. It simplifies the stat blocks of monsters immensely and makes them much easier to run at the table for game masters. I think that as a package, the character creation tools in Worlds Without Number are probably the most flexible of any of the OSR products. It doesn't mean they're the most complete, but you can pretty much, with a little imagination, create any type of character that you can possibly imagine from fantasy fiction with what you have here. This, while it's not exactly a copy of the original rules, is still easily used at the table with older products. As a matter of fact, I've ran the original Keep on the Borderlands with this rule set without having any prep work ahead of time, and it ran great. The only caveat would be, because of the extra tools that characters have to enhance the individualism of their characters, they are going to be a little bit more powerful than an original BX character of the same level. That being said, modern players typically want a little bit more survivable and a little bit more interesting options than what were offered in the original games. The other thing about Worlds Without Number is that it offers the best world creation tools. It gets into some incredible detail and has great random generation tools for all manner of aspects of a world of your own creation. So with Worlds Without Number, you're going to have access to the best of world building options and the most flexible character building options in the OSR. And here we have Adventure Conqueror King System by Autark and Alexander Macris. So Adventure Conqueror King System, in my opinion, has the best domain level play available in the OSR. I had some viewers comment that they kind of preferred the old rule cyclopedia version of the domain play rules, and I have a copy of that, so I looked at it afterwards just to see if I was shortchanging it, and I don't think I am. At least for me, the Adventure Conqueror King domain play options are much more succinct, they're much more clearly written, and I think they're more playable at the table without becoming burdensome. Another thing that Adventurer Conqueror King System offers is that it has a very unique skill system. Skills in Adventurer Conqueror King System are much more akin to a cross between proficiencies and edges or feats, depending upon the games that you're used to, and that allows for a single, simple system that allows players to have a little bit more control over what their character is going to play like at the table without making them much more complicated or more powerful. So with Adventurer Conqueror King, it is going to stick very closely to the BX roots overall. It changes the way attack rolls work slightly. At the end, the math is pretty much the same, but it is calculated a little bit differently. This one tome has everything you need, but unfortunately, it is currently out of print, but you can pick up a PDF on drive-thru for about 10 bucks. That being said, there is also a Kickstarter version of a second edition coming out, and I'm sure that will be available in print soon as well. So with Adventurer Conqueror King System, it is a little bit more swords and sorcery focused, a little bit less high fantasy. You're not going to have halflings running around your Adventurer Conqueror King world. But if you can deal without the halflings, this is going to be a great game to play post 9th level for your group. And that is why you should have Adventurer Conqueror King system at your table. Those familiar with my channel are not going to be surprised to see this here. This is Hyperboria, or the 3rd edition of what used to be known as the Astonishing Swordsmen and Sorcerers of Hyperboria. The advantages to this system are that it is a natural progression of advanced Dungeons and Dragons to a much more refined edition. If they didn't completely abandon the advanced Dungeons and Dragons model back when they converted to 3rd edition, I think this would be a very logical way for that game to have grown and evolved. Another thing about Hyperborea is it has an excellent array of classes that are very interesting and unique, and they all offer a great option at the table for your players. There's actually 26 different classes in all, and it's even more impressive because they don't have the humanoid demi-human classes from the BX edition of the game, as this is based on 1st edition. Also, humanoids do not have a playable nature in this game, so you won't be using elves, you won't be using dwarves, you won't be using halflings. If that's okay with you and you're still listening, I'll tell you what this does have. It has my favorite setting packaged with one of these games in the entire OSR. That being the setting of Hyperborea. Hyperborea is a setting where tales from H.P. Lovecraft, Robert E. Howard, and Edgar Rice Burroughs are all equally at home. You can definitely see Ashton Clark all over this one, and in the bestiary, you're going to see Lovecraftian horrors, as well as swords and sorcery favorites. This game is going to be a little bit more meaty when it comes to the mechanics. You're going to have lots of different combat options, and you're going to have a ton of different character options through the 26 classes. If that doesn't scare you, if that makes you excited to play this, this would be a great game. Also, if you just want to rob some of these classes to put in your other game, you're going to love what you see here. And here we have Lamentations of the Flame Princess. This is another small form factor A5 BX clone. What this does a little bit different is that it really brings the power level down even lower than what the original BX was. Attack rolls are going to be left unchanged as characters level up, largely, except for fighters. And overall, there is just a focus on keeping players very, very vulnerable. You won't find offensive spells. You'll find that things in the world of Lamentations of the Flame Princess are very grim and deadly overall. Whenever you are looking at the different material available for this game, you will find that there's a lot that is rooted in horror. And that's because this game is more a game about survival than it is conquering. This game also has a very nice 2-page rule set for running businesses in your game, which, whenever your characters are so close to death every time they draw swords, might be a good way for the players to spend part of their time. If you have players that want to try something a little bit different, they don't mind having a little bit more of a focus on role play and avoidance of um, combat encounters, then Lamentations of the Flame Princess could be a good option to try. One caveat, as I am a father of two, I do have to warn you, there are some graphic images within the book, and when you get into some of the extended materials, they get a little bit more involved than that. So uh, take a look yourself before you share it with younger players. But if that doesn't bother you, there is a great system here. If it weren't for the existence of old school essentials, I would say that Lamentations of the Flame Princess has the best layout. However, since Old School Essentials exists, they do have a better layout than this book. Now, so far, all of the game systems that I've talked about today have been very closely based upon TSR era D&D. That's not the case with this one. Morboorg is going to be a D20 system that, while it has stats similar to a TSR D&D, plays much more like a modern game. You're going to have set roles that are going to be used for basically any task resolution in the game. You are going to have very, very vulnerable characters, and combat is going to be very deadly. In Morboorg, you are never going to be the heroes. You're going to be the folks that are looting the heroes that were killed on the prior adventure. Things that make Morboorg different are going to be the focus on a world that is close to ending. There's an apocalyptic feel to it, and there's even rules within the game for the game to actually end. That's right, this is an RPG that does actually end, though still no one's winning it because the world is going to be done when it ends. As far as the systems themselves, they are very slick, very simple. The entire rules set could really be explained in a matter of 5 minutes, which gives it a little bit of an advantage on a lot of the OSR games. Matter of fact, you can definitely play this classless, though there are optional classes within the book and the expansions for it. Another advantage of Morboorg is that there are several variations for different genres, including Pirate Borg, which is my favorite, but also Cyborg for a cyberpunk game, or Death in Space for a space truckers game. Morboorg also is well known for its graphic design and its stylistic choices within the game. Now that is going to be something that is left to player taste, and it may or may not be for you or your table. But if it is for you, you're not going to find anything else like it that's available on the market. And that is why you may want to have Morboorg on your shelf. And here we have Ozich. Ozich is what many would refer to as the original game of the OSR. It's right there in the title, after all. This is the old school reference and index compilation, or Ozich. This game was written originally by Matt Finch, and it attempts to completely and faithfully recreate Advanced Dungeons & Dragons First Edition. I do believe it leaves out the monk, but other than that, you're going to find your favorites in here. It does change some of the tables ever so slightly because they were worried about possible copyright problems when they wrote this, because they were blazing new trails as they put this together. So the advantages of Ozich are going to be similar to those of Old School Essentials if you preferred the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons game to the BX game, because this is going to have everything that you found in your Old Player's Handbook, your Dungeon Master's Guide, and your Monster Manual in AD&D. The other thing about this particular version that I have here, because it's spiral bound, it lays flat and it makes for a very nice reference at the table. There's not a ton of art in it. It's going to be a little bit clunky in its presentation, as it does try to even keep the stat blocks and things very close to the original that it is aping. Whenever you get through the book, you will notice there's not a lot of extra commentary that goes along with it. It is pretty much strictly a gathering of the rules as they are without a lot of extra words. Whenever you use this at the table, though, that is going to come in handy, because rather than piling through Gygax's long-winded rants, which we all love, you're going to be able to get right to the rule you're looking for. And that would be why you might want to have Ozich on your shelf. If you happen to be like me and you spend a lot of your time as a young gamer playing in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition, for Gold and Glory might just be the right option for you. Now, this game is going to be very close to the original 2nd Edition rules. It's very inexpensive. Most of the art is going to be public domain stuff, so it's not going to be the prettiest of the options available. But if you're looking for something to recreate Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition games, this is going to be right up your alley. And as there's not a lot of options that focus on 2nd Edition D&D, which does have some distinct differences from the original game, this might just be the rarity that you are needing at your table. This sticks very close to the original 3 books. This is going to contain all of the information you need from the Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, and the Monster Manual, though without the little binder and the pages that rip out and you're never able to find the one that you need. This does add some of the combat options from the Complete Fighter's Guide, such as the more detailed weapon specialization rules and some of the options for maneuvers in combat. But other than that, it's going to stick very close to the original game. This one is going to be one of the less well laid out products comparatively to the others that I've talked about today. But as I've said, there's not a lot of options when you are looking at games that are trying to recreate 2nd Edition D&D. Even Hyperboria was focused more on the 1st edition of the game and advancing that logically. So, if you're a 2nd Edition fan and you're looking for an OSR option, For Gold and Glory is going to be your best and probably only bet. And here we have Swords and Wizardry Complete Revised Edition. What is special and different about this game is its starting point. This is going to be based upon original D&D, not Advanced 2nd Edition, and not even BX. This game has its roots in the original white box version of the game, as well as various expansions to that and Dragon Magazine articles and optional rules found therein. One of the great options within Swords and Wizardry is that it doesn't just give one way to do things, it often gives 2 or 3 and always outlines where their ideas for these came from. If the default rule in Swords and Wizardry strays from the original rules whatsoever, there will be a side box that will explain why they made the choice they did and what the original ruling was in the original game. Some of the choices made, because it was based on OD&D and not a later version, are going to be a little bit foreign to players that have never played in that type of a game. For example, strength to hit and damage bonuses are not available to any characters except for fighters. including Rangers and Paladins. So there is actually a reason to play a fighter in this game as opposed to many of the other variations. Another great aspect of Swords and Wizardry is that it has the best version of the monk, in my humble opinion. With Swords and Wizardry, you get a complete game. You get the player information, the DM information, and the bestiary in a very beautiful and slim tome here. And it has art that is actually the closest to the red box that I have found in any of these OSR products, even though the game itself is not based upon that product. Swords and Wizardry is going to be a great option if you have a group that is open to trying something a little bit different from the crowd and has a flair for the older versions of the game. And that is why you should have Swords and Wizardry on your shelf. And I saved these for last because I picked these copies up today while I was at River City Con in Louisville, Kentucky, and I got to spend some time with Josh Palmer from Bloat Games, who actually wrote these books. This is the Survive This Fantasy Edition rules set. You may be more familiar with the Dark Places and Demogorgons game, or Vigilante City, which used this same system. That system that fueled those games was actually based on Josh's homebrew rules that he used in his game at his table that was kind of a blend of BX with some changes to the way saving throws work. They are determined individually at character creation by rolling 4d4, and that generates a roll under number for the different saves. Interesting. And it has a skill set that is closely skewing to 3rd edition D&D. But some other changes are even more recent focused than that, being survival points, which are a luck mechanic for rerolls, and it has a number of really interesting classes and races that are going to be popular with players that have played in more modern editions of the game. In this core rulebook alone, you have 19 different classes. Everything from scions to assassins and beastmasters to barbarians, you've got them here. Everything has that same Bloat Games flair to it that you would find in the different Survive This games, such as Vigilante City or Dark Places and Demogorgons. Just like those games, these books have some fantastic art as well, and they have that edgy 90s feel to them that I really enjoy, as that is the time that I grew up playing Dungeons and Dragons. And I hope that you will find these to your liking as well. If you want to have a BX clone that is a little bit more modern in some of its house rules, then Survive This Fantasy would be a great option for you and your table. Until next time, this has been Justin from Books, Bricks, and Boards.
Josh Palmer from Bloat Games. Good gaming and God bless.